Okay, and welcome to Excel C. This is Mr. Boyer, and now we're getting into intermediate Excel. Previous to this in Excel A and B, you did some pretty basic things, did some simple calculations and all that, but now we're going to make something kind of useful. We're going to make a tool called well, we're going to make a grade book. And so we need to do a couple of things with the grade book. One is keep track of grades. We also need to, we're going to create a second sheet within our workbook here to keep track of attendance as well. So that will be in the second part of the Excel C videos. So we're going to start off with, you need to create a spreadsheet. It looks kind of like mine over here. Um, so up on row 1, I started in column B. I always like to leave uh, column A open for some reason, I guess to give a little buffer, make a little room. Anyway, in B1, I just put grade sheet, and we're going to turn that into a title up here in a few moments. Then come down here, and maybe around row 5, we're going to start in column B, and we're going to create last name, first name, uh, labels, and then below them, come up with some last names and first names of some fictional students. In this case, if you're a baseball fan and particularly a Red Sox fan, 2018 lineup, some of the players from that uh, World Series championship team are listed here. You can pick the names from a sports team. You can just pick people you know or make some names up at random. Really doesn't matter. Just make sure they don't all have the same last name and the same first name because we are going to be doing some sorting. Okay, so while you're doing that, go ahead and get those names in there. Also, we're going to create some table or some categories, some assignment categories in here. Word A, Word B, Excel A, Excel B. We'll also have a total column and a grade column. And then above each of the assignments, put the points value in there. We're using 5 points for now. You can use something different, um, but I'm using 5 points for each assignment. So while you're putting those names in there, I just want to go over some of the skills that we're going to cover in this one. We're going to go over sorting. We're going to practice some more formatting of text. We're going to work with merging and centering. We're also going to use conditional formatting. We're going to create a chart, and we're going to use the count if function. So we're going to do something a little bit different here with our functions. Instead of doing math, we're going to use this to do some counting and actually work with text. Okay, so we're going to start with our sheet here. We've got all our names entered, and if you haven't gotten those done, go ahead and hit pause now. I'll wait for you. Okay, and you're back. And first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and put some numbers next to these names. Give every student a number. So um, we just want a number so we can keep a count of how many students we have. We're not actually assigning them ID numbers. That would be a little bit different. But in this case, we're going to just count them. So I'm going to start here with the number 1, and then I hit the down arrow key, and I hit number 2 and number 3. That's getting pretty repetitive, right? So what if I do this? What if I just go ahead and highlight those 3? I'm going to grab the drag handle here, and I'm going to just drag it all the way down to Rick Porcello and let Microsoft Excel do the work. Okay, so you should also have at least 20 student names, and went ahead and did that. This little function here. It's auto numbering. Okay, and it's basically what you do is you start the pattern, and then you let Excel figure out what that pattern is, and you just tell it, hey, I want to put these numbers in here. Pretty cool, huh? All right, something else we want to do. Now notice I can't quite read all of where it says last name here, and some of these names aren't, um, they just don't fit. I'm going to use a function called autofit. I'm going to make this fit. What I'm going to do here is as I hover over these column labels, I have the letter A, the letter B, the letter C, D. As I hover over them, you see this, the pointer turns to a down arrow. But if I hover right between them, I get that little, looks like a little cross with the arrows pointing to the left and to the right. It means that I can adjust the size of these columns, and I can change how wide the columns are. I can make them really super narrow. I can make them really obnoxiously wide. But if I want to make those fit exactly to the width that they need to be to show those names, I'm going to do what's called auto fit. And auto fit, the way that works, I simply hover over that division between the columns right up in the column labels there, and I'm just going to double click, and it automatically resizes it. I can go ahead and do that on this one as well. So now we can read all the last names and all the first names. Pretty cool, huh? All right. Next thing we want to do, let's go ahead and sort these names. I'm going to so I want to just come over here, just click somewhere outside of where these names are here, and I want to sort. I want to sort the names. So I'm going to go ahead and use this sort and filter, and if I'm actually going to do a custom sort, and I'm going to say that my data has headers. Let's see here, and this isn't really going to work too well because the headers aren't lined up, so I need to do something a little bit different. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight these and sort them. Now I don't have any grades in here yet. If I did, I might actually want to go ahead and highlight this whole grid right here. That way the grades will move with them. So let's go ahead and practice that. We're going to grab the entire, just the area that contains the labels and the data. So we want to start on that row that has the column labels, but we don't need these point values up here. We just want to have all these column labels. And then I'm going to click sort and filter and use a custom sort. And then I'm going to sort by, well, first thing I want to do is I want to say my data has headers, because I do. I have headers up there that tell it whether I have last name or first name. So when I check that box, notice the selection changes, but now my sort by column, I can go last name, and then just in case I'm going to add then I'll sort by first name in case I have some of the same last names, and click OK. Now they're in alphabetical order. So it goes from B's to W's down here, and then if I had some of the same last names, or some of the same first names rather, some of the same last names with different first names, they would sort properly in that with that sort. Okay, so now we've covered sorting. We've done a little bit with some auto numbering and auto fit, resizing and formatting and stuff. Let's go ahead and um, let's go ahead and change this title. Um, first thing I need to do though is I notice it's in one cell. I really want this to cover the whole grade sheet. So what I want to do is I actually want all of these cells. I'm going to turn them into one giant cell, and I'm going to use the merge and center function. So if I highlight all of the cells from um, to cover B1 to I1 and click the merge and center button, now I have the word grade sheet in there. And now I can do some cool things with formatting. So I can change my font color. Let's go ahead and make it a red, and we're going to make it bigger. Make it a lot bigger. Let's make it a 24-point font. And I want to change that font altogether. And let's find something a little bolder. I'm going to use this Cooper Black. Okay. And now I can do some other formatting things here. If I use the font settings, I can go ahead and highlight this, and now I have a whole bunch of options. I can change the font, I can change the whether it's regular or italic or bold italic. I think I'm just going to make it italic. Keep the color there. Now I can go to things like border and I can put a border around it. I want to put a dark blue border around it, and I can click the outline button. It's going to put an outline around that, and then we go to fill, and I can do some cool things with fill. I could certainly fill this in with just a solid blue color, but I actually want just to make a little pattern in here. So I can select from the pattern color, I can select this dark blue color, and then I can select one of these fills. Now notice when I do that, a couple things about these colors. First off, if I hover over a color long enough, um, it'll sometimes tell me what that color is named. It doesn't do it in this case. Oh, there we go. So as you can see, this is blue accent 1. I'd actually selected blue-gray text 2, which is exactly what I was going for, but maybe I want something a little lighter. Maybe I'll use blue accent 5, and I can use blue accent 5 darker by 25%. Okay, sometimes on assignments, especially on quizzes and tests, you might see a specific color that says, maybe it says orange accent 2 darker 25%, or green accent 6 lighter by 80%. Pay attention to those colors because you will be graded according to your ability to pay attention to detail and select the correct colors. So I'm going to use blue accent 5, but I'm going to make it a little darker, darker by 25%. And then I'm going to put a pattern on it. And I have these gray patterns. I'm going to use 12.5% and just try that out. And I want no background color at all. So we'll do that again. And then click OK. And looks like for some reason my border, oh, there we go. Okay, so there's that pattern. I've got the border taken care of. I've got a little fill with a little pattern in it. I've got some uh, fancy text on top of that. Okay, let's go ahead and do the same thing up here. Um, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and change uh, the font and the color and all that. I can come in here, use that same Cooper Black, but I'm going to use a different color. In this case, I'm going to use that um, something a little more Red Sox. Use some of that blue there. It's a blue gray, but that'll work. And my fill in this case, I'm going to use a red pattern. Use that. Maybe I'll use this 25% gray and see how that works. Okay, and I may have to resize these columns again. That's okay. Okay, so now we've got those done. Doesn't matter if it's super visible or not, but we can play with it a little bit and maybe make it a little more visible. We can certainly make the letters a little bigger. That'll make them stand out. Again, the point here is that we're learning to do some text formatting. So you don't have to stick to the colors I did. Mine, quite honestly, are this color combination is probably not the best, but it'll work. Okay, so we've got that taken care of. Feel free to play with more text formatting. If you want to pause this, you can. I'm just going to go ahead and move on. Okay, so next thing we need to do, we need to add some scores for these folks here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause for a moment, and to you it's just going to look like it's going to pop right in here with a whole bunch of colors or a whole bunch of numbers. So I'm going to go ahead, add some scores. You go ahead, pause, do the same thing. We'll come back and we'll pick this right up. Okay, so through the magic of video editing, I've uh, popped in here with a whole bunch of scores right in the right in our worksheet here. Um, so now we need to go and do something important. Um, we need to figure out what the total number of points that they've earned. So a couple ways to do this. Number one, let's go ahead and use that sum function. So equals sum. I'm going to go ahead and do that up here. So this is the total number of points possible, and then below this are the total number of points that each student has earned. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to use the key combination Control C. And then I'm going to come down here and hit Control V to paste that in. And it's copied the formula in here, but it moved the references, of course, because those are relative references. And we're just going to use that fill handle to drag those in here. Boom, done. Okay, for the grade. The total grade, is the um, total points that the students earned divided by the total points possible. So we have to create a formula. Remember that to create a formula, the first thing you need to do is type the equal sign. And then we're going to put in a division problem. So we're going to divide this number in H6. So we select H6 and we hit the / key to indicate division. And then we want to go ahead and divide it by this number up here in H4. Now I hit enter, everything's great, right? Well, if I grab that drag handle and move it down here, something doesn't look right. Okay, in some cases we have a greater score than is possible. You can't have 111% or 115 or 154% because we aren't given any extra credit. And this one errored out completely. See, when I created this formula, I forgot one thing. Okay, H4 up here needs to be an absolute reference. So if you remember back a couple lessons, we hit the F4 key to put $signs in front of the H and in front of the 4. And when I hit enter, it gives me the same value. But when I copy them, now everything looks a little closer to what it needs to be. However, we have a problem. Okay, so we have decimal numbers in here, and that's okay, but grades are normally given in percentages. So what do we need to do? Very simple. While we have this group of numbers highlighted here, let's go ahead, go up to the number group in the Home tab and select percents. We're going to select the percent style. And when you do that, boom, turns them into percentages. Real easy. Okay, did you miss that? Go ahead, rewind, come on back, and we'll continue. I'll wait for you. Okay, let's go. All right, so another thing we need to do here before we're finished with this part of our spreadsheet is we need to do a little analysis on these numbers. Now, some students are okay; they're C students. They have a 75%. So Andrew Benintendi here has 75%. Mookie Betts has 100%. Xander has 95, and in fact, most are passing, but we have a few that we're concerned about. This guy right here, 20% average, not passing in anybody's book. So we have a few of these, and as a coach, I need to know which one of my players are failing, right? And as a teacher, I need to know which teachers or which students are having trouble. So I want to highlight this. I'm going to do what's called conditional formatting. Okay, so before we do that, if you look up here in the styles group, I've got a button that says conditional formatting, and we're going to go ahead and use that. So the first thing we're going to do, let's highlight this whole group of cells here. and we're going to apply this conditional formatting. So click the drop down, and we're going to use highlight cell rules. And we're going to give a conditional formatting. Now, remember, what is failing? Or what is a D? A D is 60% or less, right? And an F is 50 as or I'm sorry, a D is actually 69% or less, anything less than a 70 in other words, and an F is anything less than 60%. So we want to see who has, let's go ahead and find out anybody who has a D or an F. We're going to go ahead and find values that are less than 60%. Look at that, it just popped right in there. I had to kind of figured it out for us. And we're going to select light red fill with dark red text. That just happened to be the default. Worked out pretty good, didn't it? Let's go ahead and click OK. And now I've got all the students who are having a little bit of trouble. Actually, we should have changed that. That should be below 70%. So we're going to go back up here, and we're going to manage our rules. So go to conditional formatting, select manage rules, and we're going to change this. So we're going to highlight this rule here, click edit rule, and then instead of less than 6 or 0.6 or 60%, it's going to be less than 0.7. Click OK. And then click OK. And now anyone with less than a 60%, or rather less than a 70%, so anyone who has a D or an F, is in red. But I also want to find out who my brains are so we can figure out, all right, who do we need to have, um, who do we want to have tutoring these struggling students. So let's go ahead and highlight this again, conditional formatting, and we're going to do another highlight cell rules and use greater than, and anyone who's greater than, we'll say 89%. Actually, let's go ahead and go back. There's another way to do this. We should be able to use greater than, perhaps this won't give us that option here. We'll go ahead and use 89%. We're not going to use light red fill with dark red text. We're going to use green fill with dark green text because green is good, right? Click OK. There you go. So now you have your A students and your DNF students. These are the students that can help tutor those students. All right, one more thing we want to do here real quick I want to show you is some other conditional formatting, something just that will help you visualize data. I'm going to use data bars, and then we can use a gradient fill, maybe use blue, to give an indication of relative to each other or relative to 100%, how much progress are these students making? And as you can see, if I use this blue gradient fill here, now I have kind of an impromptu bar graph that tells me right away how good or how not so good a student's doing. But we could use this for other things in business too, like looking at profits or looking at production. Okay, so this is the grade sheet. The next thing I'm going to do before we stop here is I'm going to go ahead and select sheet 1 and down at the bottom, and I have this little tab right here, and I'm going to right click and select rename, and we're going to call this grade sheet. And I want to create a new sheet because I'm also going to create a grade book, and we're going to do that in the second part of this video.